Okay, folks, so I just have to touch on this little clip here from this oversight of the Federal Bureau investigation going on right now. And Jordan here brings up that whole thing about the FBI infiltrating Catholic churches. And here's the thing, they needed the premise. They needed the lockpick, so to speak, in order to get through that door, in order to infiltrate churches. So they developed this accusation and alleged that there were radical Catholics, that there were traditional radical Catholics. And I'm not going to argue that debate. There are some very zealous folks out there in all religious sects, okay? Not just Catholics, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to remind y'all, this was part of one of the steps for the continuity of government plans, okay? So that in the future, in order for them to be able to have control of the narratives and have control of the situations, the emergency situations and the crises, they needed to have a reason to go in and infiltrate the Catholic organizations. And one of the ways that they did was by labeling them as traditional radical Catholics. So then that allowed the FBI and these other agencies to therefore sanction funding to pay an informant to go into and infiltrate these organizations. It's laid out in those FEMA plans, folks. I showed you that program. I showed you that guideline and that guidance that was put out there by FEMA on how to approach. They even developed an entire little scheme and plan on how to approach religious leaders. You get into that organization and you find the most influential individual in that church and in that religious organization, and then you work on influencing that person. That was a plan. That is conspiracy all day long by the FBI and by our government agencies, okay? Under the guise of an emergency that they declared, citing that there were traditional radical Catholics, okay? So listen to what Jordan says here, and then remember back when I did those videos on the continuity of government plans and what I was sharing and showing y'all concerning their approach to religious organizations. And it was to infiltrate the organization so that you can influence and gain control of them. And listen to what Jordan says here.
America, provide a briefing on what we found. Well, we appreciate the briefing. We want to talk to the people who wrote it. Any idea how many Catholics there are in America, Director?
And in that briefing, what he's referring to was a briefing that they put out a statement citing that there were radical traditional Catholics that needed to be dealt with, because they were creating a crisis and a threat to our national security.
No, sir. There's a lot. Over 60 million. What percentage of those are radical traditional Catholics, according to the Richmond Field Office of the FBI? Again, that product is not something that I will defend or excuse. It's something that I thought was appalling and removed it. Let's read from that product, page 4 of that product. By the way, the copy you gave us, when can we get a copy that didn't have all these redactions on it, so we can actually see what the American taxpayers were paying for to see their rights, their First Amendment religious liberty rights attacked? Let me just read from page 4. Provide new opportunities to mitigate extremist threat through outreach to traditional Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on places of worship. That's pretty fancy language for they're trying to put informants in the parish, in the church. That's what this memorandum said, Director.
Yep. And that's all part of their continuity of government plans, and their plans on moving forward is to infiltrate all of the influential organizations, including the churches, put their people in place. This is the same tactic. It's nothing short of the same type of terrorism that they perpetrate across the world, where they go in and they put people in strategic positions and in place, and then they begin to influence from the inside out. This is the same thing the government is doing with the religious organizations. And I'm not a religious person, folks. Trust me. I know about religion. I studied the Bible. I studied religion. I studied all of the different religions long enough to understand and know that there's a personal belief system in play there. And that's the part that needs to be respected. Okay. And as far as this citing that there were these radical traditional Catholics, I won't argue that. There are radical traditional religious zealots in every religious cult, in every one of the schemes, okay? But the fact that this is playing out where he's mentioning specifically the FBI putting informants into churches and into parishes, that is part of continuity of government plans, and that was put out there as a guideline in their program that they distributed to their field offices direct from FEMA. So take that information however you want. I just thought it was kind of curious, okay? Because, you know, they've infiltrated just about every agency, just about every organization that has any kind of an influence whatsoever. So we are being directed by the highest law agencies in the land. And they have no respect for the Constitution. And they have it justified because of the crises and the emergencies that have been created. Just keep that in mind.